Air Force basic training is making changes, and they are deeming this BMT 2.0. But if you're new here, my name is Kyle Gott. I'm a 6-year Air Force veteran who did aircraft structural maintenance, and I'm also the founder of Airman Vision. Here at Airman Vision, we've created a streamlined solution for modern day Air Force recruiting where we're bridging the gap between future recruits in the Air Force. So if you're not yet subscribed, consider joining us and also liking this video to help others find it. Here in this video, I'm going to be covering the article that Air and Space Forces magazine has written because I feel like they've had the best article written about this subject. Now, according to reports, it's looking like on October 7th of 2025, the Air Force is going to be releasing this new revamped basic training. This is going to be deemed BMT 2.0. This new curriculum is going to extend morning PT from 60 minutes to 90 minutes, and it's going to reduce the time trainees spend training for drill and ceremony and keeping dorm inspections ready. Overall, this looks like it's going to be the biggest change is they're increasing the physical demand of basic training, and they're going to have to cut back on some other things because if you're going to add more time on one subject, you're going to have to cut things off of another subject. So this is actually going to be vital for any of you that are getting ready to go into basic training after October 7th of 2025. You're going to want to make sure that you are in physical shape because essentially what the Air Force has done is they have increased the physical demand of basic training by 50%. The good news is that Airman Vision actually offers military fitness prep workout programs. We have a beginner and an advanced program. The beginner program is meant to really get you to the point where you can pass basic training, and then the advanced program is for those of you that are looking to try to max out your PT scores. So in addition to all of these changes, the Air Force is also going to have future recruits get more exposure to live aircraft and hands-on map and compass oriented training to better prepare them for the challenges they will face in the real world operational environments. The challenges are meant to feed into Pacer Forge, the final field exercise introduced in 2022 that stimulates operations at makeshift air bases as trainees might experience conducting agile combat employment operations. So essentially, at basic training, Pacer Forge is like a mini deployment that they send you on. You'll live in tents. So one of the big reasons they said that this is to give them a sense of air-mindedness so that new airmen fully appreciate how they fit into the joint force. So essentially, they're trying to get you exposure to the aircraft to know that you might not work on aircraft, but everything that you are doing in your job is helping contribute to the mission for those aircraft to be able to get off the ground and do their job. Now, most of the new curriculum is going to get rolled out on October 7th of 2025, but it also says that some of the finalized pieces of this rollout won't be going into effect until as late as December. Another change that they're going to be making is operating in small teams. This is something that's always been a part of basic training, but I think they're trying to really make it a main core focus of basic training moving forward. So at a fundamental level, BMT leaders are restructuring the way trainees are organized, breaking traditional training flights of 40 to 50 into smaller elements in keeping with the Air Force's ACE strategy. We're going to be focusing on an element, which is 10 to 15 person cohort. We want to evaluate their ability to operate in those small teams because that's how they're going to operate most likely in combat. Not only that, but this is also how you operate typically in your job. So typically once you get to your duty station, you'll be assigned to a unit, and in your unit, you'll be assigned to a shift, either day shift, swing shift, mid shift, and you will not be working with 50 people that are in your shop. You'll be working in a smaller group of 10, 15, maybe 20 people. So at basic training, element leaders will be selected by instructors based on leadership potential. They will take mission type orders and ensure trainees in their element are ready. So currently there's a position called Dorm Chief who is in charge of the flight when the instructor is not there. He said in BMT 2.0, they will be leading the entire time. They are the leaders throughout training, not just in the dorm. As training progresses, element leaders will be reevaluated. Instructors can change out the element leaders who negatively impact team dynamics. It offers more opportunities for trainees to assume leadership positions. I'm a bit confused on this because I went through basic training back in January through March of 2013. So it has been 12 years since I went through basic training. So we had dorm chiefs when I went through, and they were in charge of our flight, and we also had 4 element leaders. And Those element leaders were typically like in charge of their row of beds. And those element leaders were there to help the dorm chief, and the dorm chief was always in charge. Anytime that the MTIs left, the dorm chief was in charge. But even when the MTI was there, the dorm chief was still the go to. If the MTI was having problems with a certain airman or something, he would try to correct it, but he would usually go to the dorm chief and be like, "This is your problem to fix. You're in charge right now." 12 years ago, it was like that. Really confused as to why they're pitching this like this is a new update. Obviously, they're probably going to restructure it in a way, but it sounds almost identical to what has been happening for the last 12, 13 years. And typically, a dorm chief, if they weren't doing well, they would get replaced with somebody else for dorm chief. And same thing with element leaders. That has been the case for over a decade. And everyone that's gone through basic training in the last decade would agree with me on that. So comment down below if you're a bit confused or if you kind of understand this better. Like if I'm missing the point of this. Right now, there's a little disconnect between what they learn from the first 5 weeks and then when they go to Pacer Forge, which is that deployment environment, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And I would say when I went through back in 2013, it was called Beast Week. A few years before I joined, it wasn't a thing and they added Beast Week. So it's actually funny. I'd seen some comments on this where some people were like, wasn't like BMT 2.0 when they added Beast Week? Because they added a deployment week and it used to not be a thing. For your guys' knowledge, every few years they've been adding changes into it and trying to adjust it as we go. So I'm actually really glad to see that they're trying to make it be like, kind of some continuity between all of basic training rather than we had a lot of classroom work, we had a lot of marching and PT, and then we went to Beast Week, which is now Pacer Forge, and there was kind of a disconnect, and like we had to relearn a bunch of stuff because we weren't really prepared for what we were doing there, and you had to learn everything in the moment. So, for example, one of the things that they're adding is going to be a new weapons relay. It's going to combine disassembling the inert M4 training carbines leaders introduced back in July of 2024 with running to teach trainees to perform tasks under stress. Trainees disassemble their carbines, do a shuttle run, and then reassemble the carbine while competing against other elements to see how quickly they can accomplish the task. In another event, instructors set up a simulated airfield and elements receive a report that a radar site on an airfield is inoperable. They must then move as a team to the site, confirm the issue, and report it. And then during that, they must also deal with some small unmanned aerial system scenarios. So at basic training, you have always had to disassemble and reassemble your rifles. So what it sounds like they've added now is it's just that, but they're making you run after you disassemble it. So you get tired. So then when you reassemble it, you are exhausted and out of breath, and your arms will probably be shaky because you'll be amped up. Your heart rate will be higher. So the goal is they're trying to get your body to be under stress while you're putting your rifle back together. But this is really not like a massive change. You already had to disassemble and reassemble your rifles multiple times at basic training, and we would practice this in the dorms as well. And then as far as the simulated airfield element goes, so it sounds like they're actually just changing what you had to do. We had to go on these small little element missions with 10 to 15 people before. It seems like they're just trying to update what those missions are that people are going on now. The new curriculum also exposes trainees to live aircraft, which is a priority for teaching air-mindedness. In late December, training officials will introduce a C-130 Hercules that belongs to the Inter-American Air Forces Academy at Joint Base San Antonio Lackland, teaching a class on aircraft fundamentals and the rules and missions of air power. Personally, I think that this is absolutely incredible. So I did aircraft structural maintenance. That means I was a sheet metal mechanic. I was basically body mechanic on airplanes. I did not get to ride on an Air Force aircraft until I was at my 5th year mark, and I got to ride on a HH-60 helicopter. But there are a lot of people in the military that don't ever step foot on a military aircraft the entire time that they are in the Air Force. And even a lot of maintainers will never get the chance to ride on an actual military aircraft. I was already getting out of the military, but getting to ride on an aircraft that I would spend 10, 12 hours a day fixing 5, 6 days a week, it really gave me a new sense of pride in what I did. And I think a lot of airmen would benefit from being able to be more involved with the airplanes that we contribute to doing the mission. So personally, I think that this is a great update. It's not going to be, anything crazy. They're not getting to ride on it. It's going to be a static aircraft that's going to be there, but just getting to go and walk on it and see it. This is something that unfortunately a lot of enlisted members never get to experience in their career. And so I think adding that in at basic training, it's really going to make a lasting impression on a lot of these future airmen, because not only is basic training like when you first join, it's like the biggest thing that you've done in your life. It's such a big deal going to basic training. A lot of people are worried about it. They're getting prepared for it. It's your entry point. You have to make it through basic training to become an airman. And it's such a core component of your military experience. I think that getting them exposure around an actual Air Force aircraft is going to be massively beneficial long term. Personally, I think this is probably one of the best things that they're doing to move forward, because personally, I think AI and unmanned aircraft and such are going to be taking over most of the combat moving forward. Adding PT and increasing PT for future and getting people ready for stuff, I feel like that's actually phasing out of combat. So I feel like this is actually a bigger impact than them increasing PT by 30 minutes. But I also don't disagree with PT. I'm training for my first and second marathon right now and potentially a half Ironman. So I'm not opposed to PT. I think it is great for you. But I think for them to pitch it like, the future of combat is PT focused, not really. The future of combat is AI, unmanned aircraft, and intelligence. Which is actually leads me into the next part, which is learning to navigate. So when orienteering begins later this year, supposed to be rolled out around December of 2025, it won't be the same kind of land navigation training soldiers and Marines get in boot camp, which focuses on finding locations while operating in the woods, but rather on understanding how to navigate within their future operating environment. Using the BMT training area, we've got our 8 squadrons, and we just lay a grid map over that. They will learn how to read the map, learn how to orient themselves to the map, and make their way around an installation. I'll be honest, I don't really see how this is relevant, but to each their own. Apparently, senior leaders in the Air Force feel that orienteering is a high priority. But I mean, I did aircraft structural maintenance. I worked on a flight line. And I mean, we had to use maps for how the flight line was laid out. But I mean, like most people are probably using like Google Maps and stuff like that today. I think most people know what a map is, how to use a map, how to orient themselves, how to drive. A lot of kids have grown up with GPS for following and driving on roads. In the comment section below, you think this is a great update and you think that this is something that is super useful. I would love to hear from you guys, because maybe I'm missing something on this as well. Really, no, I never personally experienced this in my 6 years in the Air Force with anybody that struggled with this, that needed additional training at basic training. Maybe I'm just missing something. Let me know. So the biggest change really is going to be right here is going to be PT and less marching and inspections. Increased fitness training comes as the Air Force is also increasing the run portion of its fitness test from 1.5 miles to 2 miles in 2026. BMT will also make that switch. At the end of the day, BMT 2.0 will add a 60-minute recovery period before lights out, where trainees will be guided through a series of activities to make sure that at the end of the day, they have a chance to reset mentally and physically. So this will include things like stretching and tactical breathing or box breathing, intended to lower the body's cortisol level and lower anxiety and blood pressure. We understand that the trainees won't be coming in any better shape than they currently are, but we're asking more of them physically. We need to give them the tools to be able to recover. I don't disagree with this move. I think that making time at the end of the day for them to practice their breathing and stretching is vitally important for recovery and your fitness health. So I think this is a great move. I do think that basic training, however, is going to see an increase in injuries. If you're taking people where some small percentage were already not able to handle the current physical load of basic training, and you're increasing that physical load by 50%, I think you're going to increase the injuries, even if you're giving this additional 60 minutes to help recover. Now, realistically, this is because a lot of people wait until basic training to get in shape and to be physically prepared. I don't personally agree with that. That's why we offer the 8-week fitness programs. So we have the beginner and the advanced program. I highly recommend that you check them out. Clearly said it right here. We have people coming in that are not physically prepared. Personally, I think that if you show up to basic training not physically prepared, you are the one in the wrong. We already have strict height and weight requirements to join the Air Force because they're trying to put in people that are already mostly fit. It really is the trainee's responsibility to make sure that they are fully prepared physically before they go to basic training. Personally, I think it's unfortunate that basic training has to primarily focus on fitness rather than other Air Force specific tasks. But the Air Force is learning that over the last several decades that America has become less and less fit, and they're having to now alter basic training to account for that. So I just want to throw this out there that personally, I believe that it is your responsibility to show up for basic training already being in shape. And a big reason why I believe this is because if you show up to basic training expecting basic training to get you physically fit, you are putting yourself at risk of potentially getting injured so that you get washed back. If your parents are buying plane tickets, hotels, travel plans, vacation time to come see you, do not put yourself in any potential situation where your friends and family will have to alter their plans to go to your graduation because you weren't fully prepared to handle basic training. Treat basic training kind of like a marathon. People don't sign up for a marathon and then wait till the day before to go, oh yeah, I'm running a marathon tomorrow, and then just show up with no preparation. Most people sign up for a marathon 6-12 months ahead of time, probably something similar to what you're doing for basic training. And then they spend those next 6 to 12 months physically preparing for the marathon. You should also be doing the same. You should be physically and mentally preparing for basic training. That includes doing workout programs. That includes BMT prep guides, resources that are available, the Air Force memory sheet that we offer for free on our website. I have a link down below. All of these things are available to you before you go to basic training. You should be spending the 6 to 12 months before you go to basic training preparing for basic training because you really do not want your family and friends to have to rebook their entire life because you didn't do what you were supposed to before you showed up to basic training. Something that they're going to be working on less is marching and inspection prep. And while those will remain in BMT 2.0, they will get less emphasis. It's going from inspection ready to neat and orderly. They still have to make their beds, but it's neat and orderly versus I throw a quarter on the bed, and if it doesn't bounce, you have failed. Likewise, there will only be half the time devoted to marching practice. They are going from 40 hours of drill at your basic training experience down to 20 hours of drill. Now, I overall don't fully disagree with this, but I do feel that cutting back on the attention to detail and the hyper focus of listening to small, tiny details is going to affect the long-term Air Force readiness because at least in my job, when I did aircraft structural maintenance, attention to tiny, tiny details was vitally important to doing my job correctly. And I think that basic training really set the backbone of that, every little thing matters and doing every little thing correctly. Because when I went to do my job, I had to follow regulations and technical orders, and you have to follow them to a T. So I think that this might actually personally have some negative effects long term on future airmen. They've never learned the attention to detail that the military has expected. When you come into basic training, that is where you learn that foundation. And by removing that foundation from basic training, you're pushing that off to tech school for them to learn attention to detail in their first duty station. I think that this is going to make future airmen harder to teach their jobs and the importance of their jobs because you did not hyper focus on the importance of every little detail at basic training. So those are the new updates for Air Force BMT 2.0. Let me know down below what you think about all of these changes. Do you agree with my opinions on it? Do you disagree with my opinions? I think that the marching is going to be detrimental to graduation because I think all of you that have gone through basic training, your flights definitely needed all of the hours that you used to get prepared for graduation and to make graduation look decent. So I think that they're either going to have to alter, the way that they do basic training graduation and involve a lot less marching at graduation because there are going to be a lot of people that struggle. There were people still in my flight that struggled to march properly at the end of basic training. And then the attention to detail in their dorms, like I already said, I think this is detrimental. Excellence in all we do is one of the core values. I feel like cutting back and just being like, oh, we don't need perfection in the dorms. We just need it to be like orderly. Teaching them from the beginning that there isn't actually excellence on all we do. It's just get it done. That's going to trickle down throughout these people's careers. And I feel like we're going to run into some issues with that because that was never instilled in them from day one. And then exposure to a actual Air Force aircraft. I think this is incredible. I personally think that this is the best thing that they are updating to Air Force basic training because I think them getting exposure on an Air Force aircraft is really going to be a core memory of their basic training experience because it will be the first time that they will likely have ever been on an Air Force aircraft. And for some of them, it might be the only time in their career that they will experience that. But it will have a lasting memory for them, and it will give them a lot of pride moving forward that they know what they're doing their job for. More PT. I don't fully disagree with this, but I also don't agree with it. I think we need to be really focusing at the recruiting level, make sure that they show up not like out of shape and that they are in great shape. So basic training doesn't have to add more time for PT. You're joining the military. You should be coming into the military being able to meet certain physical expectations. I don't disagree with them even making a PT test standard and them requiring recruits to pass PT tests before they go to basic training, kind of like special operations has certain standards. You have to pass special PT tests to get accepted into special operations from the get-go. Personally, basic training should do the same thing for all recruits. That would be a more streamlined solution versus the Air Force pouring money into trying to physically prepare these people. We require these people to physically prepare on their own before getting to basic training. I think that's more efficient and more effective and will make people, have had worked for their opportunity to get into the Air Force more. I think this is going to make future airmen better physically coming out of basic training. Most people are going to fall back into their habits that they had before. So I think overall, I don't think this is really going to make a big difference long term, but I do know that the Air Force is rolling out more physical requirements. So they, instead of doing tests once a year, if you do good on your PT test, you're now having to test twice a year, no matter what. And they're increasing it from a 1.5 mile to 2 mile run. There is no incentive moving forward to be in really, really good shape. If you are in really good shape, you still test as much as anybody else that's not in good shape. And then the map usage stuff and the orienteering, I think this is an absolute waste of time. That's my personal opinion. I don't see how this is going to help 95% of Air Force jobs. And then the dorm chief element leader updates, don't really think there's much of an update there. I think that's just them acting like they're doing something when they're really not implementing any new changes there. Or at least they just explain this very poorly in this article, or the person that they interviewed explained it poorly. So overall, I don't think this is going to move the needle a lot. I think you're going to give some people some more pride with getting them exposure to an actual aircraft. PT, not really moving the needle a lot. Removing the marching requirements and attention to detail with their dorms, I think that is actually moving the needle in the opposite direction. I think this is going to net out to like a 0 improvement. Feel free to let me know if you agree, disagree, what you think of these updates. I would love to hear from you guys in the comment section down below. And if you're just recently finishing basic training and you're coming back and watching this, feel free to comment down below what your experience was or anything that really stood out to you. But as always, my name is Kyle Gott. This is Airman Vision, where we're bridging the gap between future recruits and the Air Force, and we look forward to helping you in another video.